kind of a surprise last night, I think, at least for me, in that I did not think TSZYU would get stopped so quickly. I didn't think he was going to get stopped. I thought it was going to go to a decision. And of course, as you all know, Tim was on the bad end of a rather one-sided fight versus Bakram. I'm going to mess up his name, so I'm just going to call him Bakram, who is the reigning 154-pound champ with I think it's the IBF belt. So um, here are my thoughts. First, I feel like, in a sense, um, Tim has been set up all along by PBC, because TSZYU is not a PBC fighter. Keith Thurman's a PBC fighter, Sebastian Fundora is a PBC fighter, and Bakram is a PBC fighter. So when Tim originally had that WBO 154-pound strap, they set him up to supposedly fight Keith Thurman, who's never fought at 154. So it wasn't going to be a title defense, and yet it was going to be 12 rounds, and the main event on PBC's first ever card on Amazon Prime streaming. So that's a little far-fetched, first off. But then lo and behold, on short notice, less than a week, Thurman has to pull out, and lo and behold, very conveniently, Fundora was, in camp for a fight versus, I think it was Mendoza, or maybe not. My bad, I don't remember. No, it was another Eastern European fellow. But so they did the switch, right? Because he was in camp anyways, so he's already ready for a fight. So they said, okay, Thurman's out, Fundora is in, and lo and behold, magically, he got approved by the commission, by the sanctioning body rather, to compete for that belt, and winds up dethroning TSZYU. Now here's what I sort of think has been going on. There's almost always a rematch clause for the champion, and it's rightfully so, right? Like, if the champion loses their belt, they get an automatic rematch from the challenger who dethroned them. They get the automatic rematch so they can, get a shot right back at their belt. But apparently, I guess Fundora's out for a bit, I guess maybe with injuries or whatever. Now, bear in mind, Fundora has an incredibly wily manager, Samson Lefkowitz. Really, really clever guy. No doubt he was behind all of this sort of maneuvering with the sanctioning body. He already knew that, I think they all knew Fundora was going to get the shot at the belt and be that last-minute replacement. I think Keith Thurman was never, ever going to fight in the first place. He was just hired to be a talking head and a placeholder. And by doing so, now you've got TSZYU thrown off, right? Because he's prepping for this, shorter right-handed Keith Thurman, and all of a sudden on a week's notice, he's got to fight a guy that's a foot taller and a left-handed in Sebastian Fundora. Okay, so after Tim loses his belt to Fundora, you would think he would be entitled to that immediate rematch versus Fundora, and yet that didn't happen. So what I think PBC did very cleverly was say, oh, look, you know what? Fundora's out. Sorry, you can't get the immediate rematch. Hey, but we got this other guy who just got another belt at the 154-pound division. Do you want to try? Do you want to fight him for his belt? And here's the thing with when you offer a fighter a title shot, there's always pretty much only one right answer, which is, yeah, I'll take the fight. So TSZYU's kind of in a hard spot, right? He's like, it really takes a specific or a special set of circumstances for a fighter to turn down a shot at a world title. So of course Tim accepts it, but I don't know what, in all honesty, I don't know what went wrong for Tim, but I will say this. What are you guys, oh, sorry, Mustafa's saying, what are you guys talking about? Well, I put in the title live talking about the TSZYU TKO third round last night. And who's there in Utah? Okay. I'm high right now. Actually, I'm not, Mustafa. All right, so Mustafa, you don't have to be here if you don't want to be here. You can just jump off and go on someone else's live. Yeah, I was trying to make it clear to whoever's tuning in what this is about. That's why I put it in the title. I don't know if it shows up for you guys. In any case, TSZYU knows that Bakram has the height, has the reach. So TSZYU's game plan against a taller fighter with a decent reach and a good, powerful jab, TSZYU needed to plan to be like a Joe Frazier, bob and weave. He's got to get underneath that jab, get in, throw hard body shots, and then come upstairs. So, whatever Team ZYU planned out, we didn't get to see because the fight was so one-sided and so short. But I'm curious to know what their game plan was or is. But right off the bat, here's the thing with that fight. Right off the bat, Bakram got to Tim pretty quickly with a very strong jab. So, right away in round one, there wasn't any sort of wasted time. But again, I couldn't see Tim really doing, quote unquote, the right thing. Now, in a previous breakdown, this is why I didn't break this down again, is I already broke down TSZYU's fighting style. When I broke down TSZYU when we thought he was going to fight Keith Thurman. And I also broke down I think I broke down TSZYU Fundora post-fight. So nothing changes from that breakdown. Two errors I see Tim making is that he constantly dips to his right, which is sort of the easier thing to do if you're in an orthodox stance. All you have to do to bob to your right is just bend over at the waist. It takes a lot more effort to bob to your left because you got to rotate your torso and bend down and then try to maintain eye contact out of the corner of your eye. It's a lot trickier. So that's one critique I have of Tim overall. The other thing I don't like about his what he does defensively is sometimes he'll lean straight back, and that's really absolutely the wrong thing to do against the taller fighter with the longer reach, because if you're going to move straight back, you're still in the line of fire, and all that other taller person has the advantage of the reach, right? They just have to take a small step by gently pushing off their back foot. They don't even have to take a power step off their back foot. Just push off a little bit from their back foot, and they will connect because they can make up that gap really easily. Plus, they've got all their body weight behind that punch if they're pushing off the back foot. So it's a really bad defensive move. It's really more of a defensive error to just lean straight back to avoid a punch. You can do that every once in a while just to mix things up, but you should not make it a habit. Okay, so that said, the first knockdown happened with Tim when he went to go for a left body shot. So we couldn't see the action because the camera angle was from behind Bakram's back. But presumably Tim kind of dips over a little bit to his left to fire that left body shot. I think, he knew he was going to have to get to Bakram's body. But in this case, he didn't keep his guard up on this side. Again, we couldn't see it. It was off camera. Or he just didn't have the right distance. He was probably a little bit too far away from Bakram. So Bakram just came down with kind of a chopping, it's kind of a short overhand left hook. It's not a true left hook that's thrown in a horizontal plane, but he just came down and nailed Tim with that and dropped him. That was the first knockdown in the second round. And then from there on in, Tim he was not all there. So all Bakram had to do was effectively just keep up the pressure, keep throwing his jab, and he could land whatever. I wouldn't say he could land whatever he wanted, but he was landing left, straight rights, right uppercuts, right overhands, left hooks, almost everything. But in any case, Tim gets dropped 2 more times in the second round. He makes it to the bell, back to his corner. I didn't get to hear any of the corner work because that was just deleted from the original fight footage I watched, and it's certainly not on the highlights, but it's a heck of a job to try to revive a fighter who's been dropped 3 times that early in the fight. So, um, you've got to pull out all stops in the corner. You got to use ice on, not only just ice on the back of the neck. You pretty much have to pour some ice water on their head. Commissions hate that because they don't want you getting water, all over the corner. But you should do it anyways because you need to revive your fighter. Now, some trainers will go so far as to like smack their fighter in the face, and it sounds like really maybe abusive or something, but sometimes if the fighter's that sort of out of it because they got hit in the head, you got to smack them back into reality. So, you can't use smelling salts anymore, but you need something like that jolting to bring you back to like the present moment. All right, so let's see what people say. Hello, Evelyn, how are you? What area do I live? West Coast, California. It always looks nice in the background of your short videos. Oh yeah, it's Southern California. Yeah, I decided just to do this inside today, even though it is super nice outside, but there's a lot of noise out there. All right, so someone else is asking, Fighting Marine is asking, can Tim come back, do you think? Back-to-back tough fights. Yeah, back-to-back really tough losses. I'm sure he can come back, and I think at this point it's almost more of a mental toughness issue than physical toughness for him. I liked him. He strikes me as a hard worker, as a pretty humble guy. Like I encountered him when he was training in Los Angeles I think it was for Charlo, and then that never happened. I don't know which Charlo, I can't remember. But the fight fell off. But what struck me about Tim was when I crossed paths with him, it was just Tim and 2 other older gentlemen in the gym. He didn't have this whole stupid entourage of videographer, friends, personal assistants, etc., masseuse, whatever. It was just him and 2 other, presumably fighters. And so, yeah, I think he can come back, but he should definitely not get played by the PBC again. I mean, he's got to like talk to his own management, and they got to chart a path out for him that meets his demands and is not, so he's not at the whim of the promoter that's not his promoter. Doesn't mean he needs to sign with the promoter, but he definitely does not need to step into like a comeback fight as another 12-round title fight. He needs to take like an 8 or a 10-round fight, I would say, non-title, maybe even off TV, so there's no pressure. Someone said, haters have opinions, says, Sue is going to live with regret he didn't stop the Fundora fight with the cut after the 3rd. Well, I mean, that was his corner's call, more than his. Regret turning down Turkey, maybe. Regret turning down Bud and Virgil. Regret it taking fight last night. Well, it's always, 2020 vision in the rear view mirror, right? So here's the thing, haters have opinion. Fighters can't live with regrets. Otherwise, they'll just never move forward. You got to you got to resolve it. Maybe you even grieve for a little bit, but you then got to get over it. My suggestion for Tim is to take, even no matter what, whether he won the fight or lost the fight, take next week off. Don't even think about boxing. Go out, have fun. You need to give yourself a mental and emotional break too, because you can't just keep taxing your brain that way, always thinking about fighting. And then the following week, he could do more active recoveries type stuff, like just do physical activities that he enjoys. I don't know if he likes pick up basketball or tennis or golf or something like that. Can sort of slowly kind of work his way back into being physical, and then finally, maybe a couple weeks out or a month out, whatever he feels ready, he can go back in the gym. But for sure, Tim should not spar, should not even think about sparring for 60 to 90 days. He just took way too many hard shots in that fight. Number one, I thought it was really in poor taste for anybody to even attempt to interview him, because now there's that little short clip. I think it's a fight hype interview. It'll probably get memed and recycled, where Tim the interviewer says, "Oh, gee, I'm not going to ask you how you feel," and it's like, wow, isn't that considerate of you? But I am going to ask you, what are you thinking right now? And it's like, dude, the guy just is like badly concussed, and you're asking him what he's thinking. And Tim, bless him, he just gives the honest answer. He says, "What the F just happened?" And that is exactly one's thought after you get stopped like that. I can only attest to that from being choked unconscious in judo. I mean, when you come to, you have no idea that you just got choked unconscious. It's not as maybe, I don't know. I've never been knocked out from boxing. It's a different thing to get knocked out from a impact than it is from just your blood getting cut off to your brain. But um, no doubt you don't feel like yourself. And here's the thing, I think Tim was like more or less out on his feet, probably for the most of the second round and certainly even going into the third. So, of course, the only thing going through his head is like, WTF, I I came here to win. What happened? He doesn't know. So it's really kind of cruel to ask him. Anyways, um, Hibcomer is asking me my favorite fighter of all time. Probably I'll go with Archie Moore, but I would say Joe Louis, Ray Robinson, not Sugar Ray Robinson. Um, yeah, Sugar Ray Robinson, right there. I meant not Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, Archie Moore, Rocky Marciano. I'm like a throwback. And someone asked me last night about my favorite female fighter, and that's Lucia Riker. Charles is saying always pleasant to be smacked back into the present. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those sort of cruel realities. And there was a sort of infamous female boxing trainer in New York City. Actually, it was a husband and wife team. They actually worked my corner as an amateur. And I thought they were great. Don't know her. I can't remember her real first name, but her nickname was Negra, and Negra Rosario, and her husband, I can't remember his first name, but they worked my corner for a couple fights as an amateur, and I thought they were terrific. But she was known to, like, if things were getting a little whatever hectic or something, she was known to like just slap a fighter on the stool in the corner. So fortunately, I didn't get slapped by Negra, but it's just something that sometimes needs to be done. To be noted, they also had two sons who were fighters. I can't remember if they turned pro, but one of their sons did become an official USA boxing referee. And one time, I think it was in the Golden Gloves, or at least in one of the New York City amateur boxing fights, the son actually kicked his own father out of the corner, because in amateur boxing, the coach is not allowed to talk during the round. They're not allowed to yell instructions to their fighter. You can do it in pros, but you can't do it in amateurs. So I think it might have been Mike Rosario kicked his own dad out of the corner. Anyways, that's just an aside. Um, Fighting Marine is saying 154 division is hot right now. Yes, it is, for sure. Um, there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot, I would say, just in that whole range of 140, 147, 154, because some of those fighters, I think, could move around a little bit, right? Like, it wouldn't be unreasonable for Bud Crawford to come back to 147. It wouldn't be unreasonable to ask or to have a 147 pounder move up. Ryan Garcia's, he's out of the picture for a bit, but he'll be back in the spring. So, who knows if he'll want to go up to 154. Um, Addison Parker is saying Megumi Fuji. I'm not sure if you're just mentioning the name, or you're commenting, or you're saying that's your favorite fighter. Favorite Ninja Turtle. Hipcomer's asking me my favorite Ninja Turtle. I don't really know. I just, sorry, I wasn't into the Ninja Turtles enough to like pick a favorite, but I thought they were all pretty cool. Charles is saying, yeah, Better Son got smacked into the present as well. Yeah, Charles, I would imagine that the Rosario boys did get smacked by their mom at some point, whether it was in a fight or just maybe they got the slipper thrown at them. Who knows? Okay, Fighting Marina saying, I hope Tim does come back strong. He's one of the few that will fight everyone. Well, yes, exactly. And that kind of, I feel like PBC kind of took advantage of his willingness to fight. I think tomorrow or later tonight, I have a little video out there, a couple videos about my sort of theory about how he got set up with the bait and switch with that first fight. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds maybe a little bit far-fetched, but it's my theory that they knew all along that Keith Thurman wasn't actually ever going to fight TSZYU. Because it makes no sense at all to have your very, very first fight card on a new streaming platform, which is Amazon Prime. Makes no sense for the promoter to put the main event as a non-title fight with a world champion, which at that moment was TSZYU. So, I think they set Tim up, and just baited and switched Keith Thurman out for Sebastian Fundora at the last minute. I think I was mentioning before, Sebastian Fundora has a super wily manager. Samson Lefkowitz. Very clever, very, very, very clever guy. So, in any case, here's who was it? Martin, who's one of our regulars on the channel, was asking me in the comments if I think Tim underestimated Bakram. And the answer to that is, apparently he said, I saw an interview pre-fight where he said he didn't think Bakram was the brightest guy. So perhaps he underestimated him, in terms of ring IQ, but it almost didn't matter because he was overwhelmed physically. And it's hard for me to imagine that he could underestimate a guy that's both taller than him, got a long reach, and got a powerful jab. That's not somebody you should take lightly if you're the shorter, more compact guy, even if you do believe you're the more powerful puncher, because your power is no good if you can't land on somebody, and it's harder to land on someone who's taller with a longer reach, simply because they're more mobile and they can hit you before you can hit them at the same range. Fighting Marine is saying, yeah, that Fundora fight last minute was crazy. There's no way you can prepare for a guy like that on short notice. Yeah, it was like a week's notice, so absolutely not. Completely different game plan for someone who's that much taller and a southpaw. So now Tim's corner didn't do him any favors by being inept with closing that cut, but I just think the whole setup to that fight, whole lead up, was there were some shenanigans going on. Oh, and here's the other thing that really sort of sealed it for me was Keith Thurman's bicep tear. Right? I don't know if you guys have ever had a muscle tear or have ever had a friend who had a muscle tear, but the result is you get this crazy dark purple bruise wherever, and it's like it fills the whole limb. The hematoma fills the whole limb. Again, on this other video I posted, I screenshotted Donald Cowboy Cerrone, the MMA fighter. Well, he tore his bicep because he's of all things doing like that bucking bronco rodeo thing, and his hand got kind of caught in the whatever you call that grip thing that they hold, and he wound up tearing his bicep. And so he posts a picture of it, and you can surely see the purple in the bicep and in the forearm. Weightlifters, especially powerlifters, they wind up tearing stuff. I shouldn't say all the time, but it's not an uncommon injury for someone who benches heavy or to tear the pec. My powerlifting coach Scott Mendelson in Los Angeles, he tore a pec, and his whole entire torso turned dark purple. And of course, that's you can find that one on YouTube. But my point is, whenever you tear something like that, the ligament, the muscle, you're gonna get a dramatic effect, and almost everybody's gonna post something on Instagram if that's what happened. And Keith Thurman didn't. Now, he posted other stuff, but he didn't post a pic of this, you know, the hematoma that should result from you tearing your bicep. Just saying. Anyways, I'm not saying he didn't have surgery because it looked like for sure he posted pics of himself in a cast, but the question is the timing. You know, he may have already known that he was injured and he was never going to take this fight, and he just had to deal with the PBC. And then when the time was right, he announced that he has the injury, and then he goes and gets the surgery. So, you know, anyways, the Fighting Marine says, yeah, that Fandora fight. Oh yeah, sorry. We read that comment. Yeah, so tell me, what do you guys think? Who do you want to see Tim fight next? Do you think he should still fight? How many of you guys had heard about Bakram prior to this? Here's the thing with this fight. I think TSZYU's name is the one that got eyeballs on this fight because very few people I certainly hadn't heard of Bakram, even though he is world champion. So again, I feel like TSZYU was kind of used in a sense for this title fight to bring the eyeballs that, you know, Bakram, if he fought somebody else who was unknown, another unknown challenger, I don't think anybody would have watched that fight. I think the interest was pretty much to see how TSZYU would fare. But in any case, do any of you guys watch MMA? Are you guys looking forward to the upcoming UFC fights where Max Holloway is going to take on Ilia Topuria? Fighting Marine says, I think he should come back versus a non-puncher, maybe Zarafa, his fellow countryman. Right, another Australian guy, 6 months off first though. Yeah, I would agree. He definitely needs to not spar for at least 3. So, I mean, he couldn't take a fight for, you know, at the earliest it would be 6 months, right? Giving himself a 3-month camp to get it together again. But yeah, that puts us into next late spring, early summer, that kind of thing. But for sure, he needs to let his brain rest. For sure, TSZYU's concussed. And the thing with that is it's critical to just rest your brain. Shouldn't be playing video games, shouldn't go out to a nightclub with all the flashing lights because that's too much brain stimulation. Yeah, video games are not relaxing. They're overstimulating for the brain, so you don't want to do that. And, you know, you definitely don't want him doing a lot of hard physical activity. So, yeah, he needs to just relax for a little bit and let his brain recover. Fighting Marine is saying, UFC, I think Max is in trouble. The guy he's fighting has the best boxing skills I've seen in the UFC. Who do I have? Yeah, I think that's an interesting fight because both guys really pride themselves in their boxing skills. I think Max is a great striker, but he may have met his match with Ilia. Now you're right. I really like Ilia's boxing style. So in a sense, it would be kind of wise for Max to just use his striking to get to the grappling, to get to the ground, because even though Max might favor himself as a striker, you've got to look for the holes in the game, so to speak. You got to sometimes try to be the greater at the lesser. If you both guys think they're great strikers, then you got to be the better grappler or the guy on the ground. Sometimes, unless you've got so much faith in your striking that you just figure you can take them out. But I don't think that's ever a safe game plan for MMA, to just assume you're going to win either standing or on the ground based on where your strengths lie. Sugar's saying, hey, welcome back, Sugar. He's saying, I think Tszyu should take close to a year off, okay, which gives him time to recover. He might have water on the brain. That would be super scary if he did. His turnaround from from Fundora was way too quick. Yeah, it's a good point. A lot of I think some people might have brought that up during our live. Was it you, Shug, that maybe he should have taken like an easier quote unquote fight in between Fundora and his next fight, like he should have taken like an 8 or 10 round non-title fight. Um, Ishan Nair saying, "What's the channel all about?" Fight game, boxing, MMA. So we started talking about basically the TSZYU TKO for those of you guys who just jumped on. But we're now kind of also talking a little bit about MMA and stuff. So Sugar's saying, D, have you ever had an injury that you thought you got over and came back earlier than you should have for a fight and had to change your style to get through the fight? If so, which fight? Well, I had an injury which was that got misdiagnosed, so I didn't know it was there, and then I just kept training and fighting anyways. And yeah, I did have to adapt things. It was I fractured the end of my left collarbone, and initially, the first X-ray they just took it from this direction, looking straight forward. So it looks like the collarbone is just up, which is called a separated shoulder. It really has nothing to do with your shoulder. It's just your collarbone. It's not really a joint. It just sort of rests over this area here, and if there's impact here, it can just get displaced and it pops up. There's no reason to have surgery unless you just cosmetically don't like the fact that you got this funny little thing sticking up now. So for that reason, I just decided to let it heal. I didn't know the tip is actually fractured, but you can't tell that by looking in this direction. It wasn't until many years later when I got an X-ray looking straight down and from the side looking in that we figured out, oh, it's in fact fractured. Oh. So in any case, because I didn't think it was fractured, I just kept training, do push-ups with my right hand instead of both hands, and just let people know, hey, this was when I was doing judo, so I fight left-handed in judo, so I kind of had to just ask my training partners not to yank really hard on my left side. But so I just adapted, but I didn't have to adapt um, during a fight because it happened during practice. I guess that's my point. And uh, it happened in Paris, France. So that was kind of the tough part. Was just you know like getting injured abroad. You don't have access to the same medical care that you're sort of used to. But in any case, all right. So Fighting Marine says, I really can't see Max winning on his feet unless he lands big during an exchange. Yeah, Max is tricky. It kind of depends I feel like which Max we get, because sometimes he's just so sharp and so slick that he looks unbeatable. But Ilya Tapuria does have very, very solid, effective, and he's got tight defense standing up. I really like how responsible Ilya is, defense wise, and all his punches are thrown with real technical precision. So, yeah, he's a good example of an MMA fighter with good boxing. Charles is saying boxers should try avoiding cranial stimulation. Ironically funny. Well, yeah, they should try to avoid it if you've had any type of concussion, like even a mild concussion. Um, that doesn't mean you can't think at all, but like, for example, if you're a kid in school and you get concussed during a football game, they should let you not have to take your test. You don't have to take a test the next day. Maybe it sounds kind of wimpy, but there's actually there is a scientific basis to all of this. Yeah, you can't overtax, an athlete that's been concussed. Sugar's saying that misdiagnosis is crazy. It makes me think of Andre Ward boxing uh, with the Kobe Bryant injury for like 15 years. Athletes are unbelievable. What's the Kobe Bryant injury? Is that shoulder or elbow, hand? I'm not really familiar with that one. Sugar saying I got hit so hard playing U.S. football once when I turned in my homework the next morning. A lot of the sentences were gibberish. Some letters were backwards. Oh no, that's that's rough. Yeah, U.S. football's just high impact, and that was actually where I learned a little bit. What I'm sharing with you about brain health, because a few years back when I was in Los Angeles, there was like this sort of, I don't want to call it movement, but they're really trying to get all the coaches, all the athletic coaches to become aware of symptoms of concussions and how to treat athletes, or really not to have the athlete do. Like, don't tell them just suck it up and go back out there. Allow them to rest from school tests and whatnot. Um, and they broke it down scientifically for us. They showed us, slides of like those tau proteins that form in the brain over time to that leads to CTE, etc. So uh, the really horrible thing about CTE is that, of course, it's not diagnosed until somebody's dead, because they have to do the autopsy and um, slice open the brain to confirm that this person had CTE. And Shug, yeah, U.S. football, we hear about that sadly. Some very sad stories of former NFL players who kind of lose it in some way, either homicidal, suicidal, whatever, with crazy depression, this, that, and the other, and then um, you know post mortem we find out, yes, for sure they had CTE. Sugar saying Kobe Bryant injury is the torn rotator cuff. Oh man, that's gotta hurt. And it's gotta also limit your how much force you can exert with that arm, I would assume. Um, Torn rotator cuffs much more um, is going to be much more of a male injury, simply because of the angle, right? The wider angle to the shoulders. There's a lot more torque on a guy's shoulders. With women, it tends to be the knees, because the hips are wider, and then there's that angle into the knee, and then kind of we're a little more sort of bow-legged, so there's more torque on our knees. Um, so for example, a lot of female judoka wind up getting the ACL surgery just because they tear, it's so easy to tear the ACL and the MCL. Okay, Sugar's saying there are warning signs in the NFL with Rashaan Salam, but people didn't have the training. Right, I get to recognize it. Yeah, it's a shame it took us so side to really shine a light on it. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it does take tragic incidents to shine a light on sometimes, how to deal with certain conditions. Shug says, and Kobe still played on. Pacquiao cited it as the reason he wasn't as explosive against Floyd. I think he didn't. I think he toured swinging a hair most of the fight. LOL. Yeah, I mean, that Floyd Manny fight, I mean, there was so much build up to it, and then it just turned out to be sort of a disappointment. I mean, kind of because it was like probably 5 years too late in the actual making. But that said, yeah, Manny just was completely dismantled by Floyd. So, um, I mean, yeah, we can look back and go, oh, I wish they had done that sooner. But to Floyd's credit, he's smart in the ring, and he's a smart businessman, and he knew when to fight which fighter and who to come in heavy on, right? All of that. That's why Pacquiao insisted on $1 million a pound if you come in overweight or something like that. It was pretty severe because of the trick Floyd played prior. Like he was just like, I don't care, I'm coming in heavy, and I'll just pay the fine. It's the price of doing business. Sort of a sort of maybe where Ryan Garcia got that idea from. I don't know. All right, guys. So I just wanted to check in with you guys about Tim Zhu. So I know we've gotten on to other topics, but does anybody have any other thoughts about Tim Zhu? Sugar saying, I would love to see cross promotional battles with MMA, within MMA with the companies. Maybe a recovered Stan Fairtex versus Zhang Weili. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. It'd be super cool to see if UFC would work with one FC or Ryzen, but I don't know. I think I'm not sure what it is. If it's the whole bad taste that the whole Pride thing left in the UFC. Pride kind of messed over UFC when UFC bought out Pride, right? And Ryzen is simply a rebranding, right? It's the same fellow who's running, the same fellow that ran Pride is running Ryzen. I don't know if still with all the Yakuza involvement, but in any case, I kind of think that's sort of understood over there in terms of the fight game, probably both boxing and MMA. I don't know. But uh, yeah, so I think there's a little bit of hesitance from the UFC to do much with Japan. If you notice, they're happy to set up a UFC PI in China, and that's sort of their gateway into Asia. But they haven't brought over, they're just starting to bring over Japanese MMA fighters into the UFC. There's maybe three or four, and now the one coming up is Kai Asakura. He's a big star who was built up through Ryzen. And so it'll be interesting to see how he fares with the UFC. It's a big step up, and my concern for Kai is I think he's sort of at the tail end of his MMA career. So I hope he can still find the motivation to train as hard as he's going to need to train to just put on a good show with the UFC. Group B saying, I think Tim underestimated his opponent. It could very well be so. If he's willing to go out there and say he didn't think that Bachram was the brightest guy, then maybe he just sort of wrote him off completely. Group B saying thought he could stand and trade. Yeah, I guess, which is kind of a dumb thing to assume with someone who's got the height and reach on you. Sugar saying, yeah, if they had some type of tournament between the promotional companies, that would be epic. Yeah, it would be. I just don't see Dana doing that. It's kind of what happened with the first Super 6 tourney. Yeah. It would take Turkey to make the cross-promotional MMA to happen. I mean, he was able to do it with boxing with two big UK promoters, right? I don't know that Turkey's going to be able to do that with, I think, and then he did one, right? He did one PBC thing, or did he? I don't know. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to really get Golden Boy Top Rank and PBC to stop the shenanigans and just make the big fights. But if anyone's going to do it, it'll be Turkey, because there's kind of no excuse, right? If money's not the issue for him, then what other problem can you have? And apparently Dana White, gets along well with Turkey, from what I understand. He has good things to say about him. So, Shug is saying, and one is the juggernaut of Asia. One meaning one championship. That's the name of the promotion, is One FC. ONE FC. It is the juggernaut of Asia and Africa. I didn't know it was so present in Africa. There's no way to avoid them if you want to do a joint venture or enter the Asian African market. Well, it certainly seems like Dana does. I'm not sure if he gets along well with Chatri, who seems to be an interesting fellow. I don't know what the real deal is with Chatri, other than he, was this apparently young man who was abandoned by the father, and his mom came to live with him in his dorm in college. I mean, this is the backstory as told by him, right? And then he makes it in business, and then he still trains. Like, saw something where he just got promoted to his black belt in jiu-jitsu or something. I'm not sure, but he's primarily started out in a striking sport. A striking martial art. Anyways, so he's kind of different. I don't know yeah, I haven't heard Dana White talk about him much at all. So, for sure, I don't think Dana wants to have anything to do with the PFL. He never has anything good to say about them, which is fine. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see because Dana has said he's committed to both the Asian and African markets. Let's see if he does any work with One FC or even with Ryzen. Shug is saying De La Hoya is working with Turkey, but Al Heyman sometimes acts like like Michael Corleone. He did the same when he was in the music world in the 80s. Huh, very aggressive businessman. Yeah, I knew that Al Heyman was in the music industry. It's kind of interesting to see the boxing people who've come over from the music industry. I don't know if you're familiar with the late Cedric Kushner, who is from South Africa. Um, he promoted I can't. I want to say he might have promoted Fleetwood Mac, but I'm not sure. He promoted a number of American groups and then crossed over into boxing. So it's kind of interesting, right? All right, guys. So the sun is starting to go down a little bit over here, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up very shortly. But do you guys have any further thoughts about Tim Zhu? Um, I think we're all kind of in agreement that we don't want to see him fight until, next year for his own sort of recovery. And it sounds like we also don't want to see him in a big 12-round title fight. We'd rather see him take a comeback fight, 8 to 10 rounds first. Shug said, I did security in the 80s at a lot of the promotional concerts. To call his crew slash security goons is almost complimentary. That's pretty funny. Wow. Okay. That's kind of that's very interesting. So I guess that's why Al Heyman can kind of just hide behind closed doors all the time, right? He's got pretty tight security, as we would say. Tight security is tight, tight, tight. Clinton style or Bronx style. I don't know. Take your pick. That used to be the little disclaimer at the bottom of flyers for nightclubs and parties in New York City. Anyways. Yeah, Sugar saying I think Sue needs a year off to come back at his best. Yes, I agree. I think he could come back after 6 months and just take as we call it, a tune-up fight. Um, if he's not signed to a promoter, it's really easy, or not easy, but it's something that can be done because he's not obligated to fight for a promoter. He could just go to some obscure place and fight somebody just to get back, not just to get another W, but to get back in the ring and sort of feel himself out. Sugar saying, yeah. So with that said, I will see you guys the next time. Before I sign off, is there any burning issues or fights you'd really like me to break down in this upcoming week? I think um, someone had already asked for Anthony Yard. I was planning on doing Tapuria Holloway. Uh, Sugar saying, have I ever been asked to act as chief second or corner a fight? Um, I have not. I mean, I've mostly just helped people out in the gym. So I've never worked in a pro fight. But there's a whole art to that, and I think I would be okay at it, just from experience. All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. Um, Hope you enjoyed our little chat and our live stream. So I will post this. This is kind of my post Tim Zhu loss um, follow up. So I will put this up shortly, or this will get posted shortly to the YouTube channel. So anybody that missed it, you can just send them over here. All right. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you soon.